This video is going to show you how to create thumbnail sketches for your relief sculpture. So when you have your photo that you are looking at, you're going to start by looking at all of the basic shapes that you see within your photograph. So like for this cupcake, in the bottom part here, I see a rectangle. And then in the top part, there's a triangle here. Those are super basic shapes to break it down. Now I could say that the top part is a little bit more organic because of those curves that we have on the edges. So I can try to break down that triangle into some more organic shapes. But those are the basic shapes that we have here and that we're going to take into our sketches. So when you do your thumbnail sketches, you are going to decide, how do I want to arrange my object into a design, into a work of art? So you can start by just drawing your basic shapes of your object. So here I just have a simple cupcake where the bottom again is a rectangle and then the top is more of like an organic kind of triangle shape. Then I can decide, how do I want to rearrange that relief sculpture? Do I want to do a whole bunch of little cupcakes and then maybe have one that's bigger or a different color? Do I want to fragment or split apart my cupcake so it's kind of looks a little distorted in a way? Do I want to create maybe 3 different cupcakes and maybe having each one have something slightly different in them, or having them go back in space? Or I could do a grid of cupcakes, again having some sort of detail included in that design. Or I could do a cupcake and have a background with my cupcake to kind of add to not just having a cupcake, but having something else there as well. And then once I have that, I can decide which one I want to stick with and which one I would like to work with. And so then I can start by creating my final sketch. So for my final sketch, what's going to be important is to start thinking about your cupcake or your object in terms of layers. And we do that by looking at the places that have the most depth. So the frosting, this part of the frosting right here is coming out closer to me than this little part in here that's farther away. And that happens with all of these little rims of frosting. I can also say the same thing about this part of the cupcake. It's coming closer to me. The cupcake part on the bottom is farther away. So when I do my final sketch and I break it down into those basic shapes that I'm going to use, I am going to create layers and draw more shapes of where I'm going to have those layers that are coming out farther, that have more depth. So again, in my frosting, I want to have some more layers within my frosting because those are coming closer to me in the photograph in real life. And so I'm going to create that in my sculpture as well. So I have extra shapes here. I have 1 shape, 2 shapes within each one of those shapes that I have. And then I also have a couple layers on the bottom where I broke down the bottom part of the cupcake into some shapes as well. Then I can look at my final sketch, and now I need to break down those layers so I can see them separately and know what shapes am I going to cut out of a piece of paper or whatever material you are using. So I'm going to start with just one basic outline of my whole entire shape so that I can use that to build off of my layers. Then I wanted one of just the frosting on the top, that's all one shape, that I can use as the first layer on top of my outline of my whole entire cupcake. And then I redrew my next layer of the frosting that has the more depth, that's coming out closer to me. And then the same thing, I drew one more layer here. So again, that frosting keeps coming out the closer you get to that middle part. So those would have the most depth and the most layers. And then I also broke down the bottom of my cupcake into some other basic shapes here because those parts also come out, these little ridges here, to have more depth. So I want them to be closer to me with the layers. And so I would put those on top of my cupcake. Any other details like negative space, you can also draw those in so you know where you're going to cut those out and where you're going to start once you start on your final sculpture.